Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Ronning Hall, your neighborhood preparedness evangelist. Tonight, we'll be talking about water, sanitation, and hygiene wash after a major earthquake. This program tonight is brought to you by Cedar Hills Ready Quake Up, and our mission is to create caring, connected, and resilient neighborhoods. We are committed to making sure that every neighbor is prepared and has the best chance of survival in the event of a disaster. So welcome. We've invited people not only from my neighborhood in Cedar Hills, but also from across the Portland metropolitan area. Because Cedar Hills Ready isn't just about my neighborhood, it's about yours too. It's a movement to connect neighbors with each other because there's strength and it's also more fun in numbers. We're making our content freely available to everyone. So feel free to share this information with all of your important people. If you happen to be from a neighborhood outside of Cedar Hills and you want to get prepared in your neighborhood, we'll help you get connected to the right people. If we know people in your neighborhood, we'll make sure we connect you with them. Okay, so a few technical notes. We are recording this meeting so that we can make it available to others who could not make it tonight. So it should be recording. And we would like this to be an interactive meeting, but given the size, please stay on mute unless you are called on. And that may happen during the Q&A point. Anytime during the presentation, you can ask a question or contribute with your comments via the chat box. You'll find the chat bubble at the bottom of your screen, and that's where you can enter, click on that chat button, and then it'll bring up, hopefully, depending on your platform, something that looks like this box on the screen. Enter a comment and hit return, and you'll have, then you have submitted your comment. And we have a person who's monitoring that throughout the meeting. That's Barbara Bracken. And if we haven't answered the question during the meeting, during the presentation, then we'll answer the questions at the end of the Q&A. Okay, and for the best experience, we recommend watching this in speaker view or in speaker side by side, and you can change your views. Usually it's in the upper right corner of the screen is how you get to that, depending on your platform. All right. So this program is part of an ongoing series. Most of our meetings are going to be on the third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Our next month is going to be a focus on go bags. We'll break in December. Topics are subject to change depending on speaker availability. And because you've signed up for this meeting, you'll be getting a follow-up email and notifications and our newsletter. You can cancel the newsletter or opt out of the email at any time. That's on every single email. Okay. This presentation is a product of the efforts of your neighbors and community members and leaders. Before we get started, I wanted to thank a few members of the Cedar Hills Ready Quake Up team who worked on creating this program. We meet every Friday. Starting with me, I'm the ringleader of Cedar Hills Ready. Bill is my partner and is our speaker tonight. In addition to being a founder of Cedar Hills Ready, he's also a member of Beaverton CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. Barbara Bracken will be tracking chat comments and leading the Q&A session today. She is the Tualatin Ready Program Manager. Tualatin Ready Program provided the source materials for our Get Prepared Now booklet, which we make freely available to everyone on the website. Stan Hausman, speaking of the website, he's the founder of Quake Up and also the master of disaster, and he manages our website. And Lincoln Thomas is our Cedar Hills Ready neighborhood coordinator. He's also our monthly newsletter editor. Judy Janowitz has been a Beaverton CERT for many years, and she coordinates the Waterhouse Neighborhood Ready program. And former City Councilwoman Kate Arnold is getting involved in Beaverton's Neighborhood Ready efforts. She's our timer for the meeting. We are always looking for new input. If you are interested in joining our efforts, please contact us at info.cedarhillsready@gmail.com, and it's right there at the bottom of the screen. So let's move on to our agenda. Last month, we talked about the basics, safety preparation steps, and focused on identifying and fixing home hazards. Today, we're going to focus on water, sanitation, and hygiene after an earthquake. Making sure that you have enough clean water is one of the most important things to consider in preparing for disasters. I'm going to turn this part of the program over to my partner, Bill Hall, to guide us through these topics. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. And as I mentioned before, feel free to add your questions in the chat at any time during the presentation. Some of this information may not be new to you. And if it isn't, hopefully it will give you something to share with people that you care about who aren't as knowledgeable. Let's have some fun and learn something. Bill?
Thank you, Karen. Okay, I'm so glad that all of you were able to make it tonight. If you attended our discussion last month, you will remember that we did a visualization exercise. In an 8 to 9 point Cascadia earthquake, the first steps are to protect yourself, take care of your family, and then turn off your utilities, shut off the gas if necessary because of fire danger, and then you shut off your water main at the house. Today, we want to talk about the whys of water. Now, I'm going to split up our discussion into 3 parts defined by the CDC and the World Health Organization as WASH: water, sanitation, and hygiene. First, I want to talk about why this matters and then break the discussion down into some hints about what you can do in each area to get ready for the big one. But first, why you should get ready. United States Geological Survey says that Americans use 80 to 100 gallons of water per day per person. According to the National Environmental Education Foundation, the average Oregon resident uses 113 gallons of water every day. No, seriously, look at your water and sewer bill if you don't believe this. Most of that 100 gallons is heavy use of the toilet and showers and baths, according to our utility companies. We take it all for granted. We use it without thinking much about where it's coming from or where it goes after we use it. Now, what would 100 gallons look like if you put it all in one place, just for one day's use? This picture shows, about 35 gallons visible in the garage. Multiply that by 3. Now, we don't put it in the garage though, do we? We run it through the faucet, through the toilet as we need it without thinking much about it. So here's the deal. This slide comes from a joint study of our emergency response agencies on the West Coast in Oregon. Shows the estimated time to restore basic services after the expected big Cascadia earthquake. Now that earthquake is likely to be an 8 to 9 point seismic event, which will last anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, shaking and rolling the level ground, splitting roads, collapsing buildings, and violently smashing and breaking apart utility supply systems. Now, obviously, there are going to be all kinds of problems everywhere. But today, let's just focus on the impact on water supply, because a big quake is very likely to disrupt and shut down the automatic systems that you and I take for granted every day, toilets and faucets. Now, according to FEMA and both the state and local emergency planning agencies, we are likely to be out without our water and sewer infrastructure for weeks and maybe months, maybe up to a year after the big one. So thinking about the water usage that I just showed you in the garage, consider the estimated time to restore water and sewer in Beaverton. Imagine no toilets, no faucets for 1 to 12 months. Now, I think for the purposes of our discussion, I'm just going to use 3 months as a kind of a basic planning tool. So why the dire prediction by our government? Well, it's hard to visualize, but as these pictures show, here on the left, this is the installation of our infrastructure, showing that water and sewer lines were often buried under the street in the same tunnels.
I can work down.
Yeah.
And on the right,
Wow.
the kinds of ruptures that can occur. This one in the 1971 San Francisco earthquake, which was actually quite a bit smaller than the one that we're talking about and expecting. Now, this can be the cause of cross-contamination between water and sewer lines. And if you don't shut the water main in your home off very soon after the earthquake. Now, in addition, of course, if there's an extended period of interrupted water service, you actually have several gallons of water in the pipes in your house that, if they're not contaminated or draining back into the street, will be good to drink. That's pretty important because for some time, say 3 months, you're going to be wholly dependent on yourself to provide your family with the necessary water in order to stay healthy, without toilets or faucets. You're used to this. You do not want this. Okay, first let's look at how much water you really need to live, not what you're actually using in our society today. Scientists tell us that people need a minimum of 1 gallon of water per person per day to stay healthy. Half or a little more than that is for drinking in one form or another, and the rest is for washing and cooking, both vital for good health. Now, that's a lot less than 100 gallons, but it's a bare minimum for staying healthy. 1 gallon per day per person. For purposes of readiness in case of an emergency, FEMA and our local emergency response agencies say that everybody should have a 2-week supply of potable, that's drinkable water on hand for emergencies. That means at least 14 gallons of stored water per person. So for a family of 4, that's 56 gallons that you have to store for 2 weeks use. Now for reference, think back to that picture I showed you, the jugs in the garage earlier, that's about twice that, just for an extended urban camping trip at home. No faucets, no toilets for 2 weeks. So how do we store water? Well, in refillable containers or in pre-bottled water containers. The picture on the upper left shows a standard 5-gallon food-grade water jug available at most grocery stores for around 10 bucks. There are other sizes and styles, lots of them, but I'll just use this one for illustration. You should always wash and sanitize containers that are going to use tap water with bleach and replace the tap water in this kind of a storage container every 6 months while you're storing it. Please avoid using milk jugs or other containers that had food in them that might not be completely cleanable. Some of that plastic is actually semi-permeable and they can create an environment for bacterial growth. I just advise getting new food grade jugs like this. Now, commercially bottled water, like what I'm showing here, should be kept in its original container until you need to use it. Don't open it early. It should last at least the year that we're talking about, definitely the 3 months. Store water in a cool, dark location. So I have taken the 1 gallon per person per day requirement and put together a 2-week plan for a family of 4. Family of 4, 2-week supply is going to take 12 of these jugs to store, or 20 cases of bottled water. And of course, if we use the FEMA emergency planner estimate of recovery time for our public water systems, again, using my 3-month figure for them to come back online, that means 72 of these jugs or 100 cases of these 16-ounce bottled water bottles. You can do it, but that's a lot of water. I mean, lots of space needed for storing water. Think of your garage, under your bed. Think of the back of the cupboards. Think of a closet that you're using. You know, it reminds me of a fish story. You know what the fish said when it swam smack into a wall? Damn. All right, how many of you are likely to store this much water for emergencies? 100 cases of bottled water, that's 348 gallons. Well, you might be thinking of water lines, like you may have seen on television in other disasters. Now, I remember the run on toilet paper when the COVID pandemic hit. And then, of course, we know how well the government's vaccination distribution plans are going. You might be able to spend a lot of time in a line like this if FEMA and local governments get their act together sometime in the first month or two after the big quake and let you know exactly where they are delivering water. When might that happen? Well, that's unclear. At some point, the military is likely to be deployed to do this after a while. They may have what's called a CPOD, a community point of distribution model, but current actual emergency plans are very unclear for our community. We've checked with all the agencies that we depend on, and while all of them seem to be in the process of planning for backup systems in case the infrastructure is interrupted, it's a huge task. And the likelihood of broken roads and bridges making transportation unpredictable, plus the multiple levels of national, state, local, and utility ownership responsibilities are keeping those plans at a very high level in the bureaucracies. And we've been unable to discover any comprehensive neighborhood level water distribution strategies showing where you can actually acquire drinking water if the faucets are shut off. So in the meantime, the best advice that I've been able to get from these agencies is have your own personal plan ready for when the big one hits. So let's think about some workable alternatives for acquiring water for survival. What are your thoughts? Let's spend a minute thinking about where you might find water after you run out of stored water and before the government can respond. Well, let's take a couple minutes here. Write down some of your ideas in the chat feature. And I'm going to ask Barbara to capture these and start sharing your ideas with the rest of the group. Go ahead.
Nothing yet, but a question did come in. Can I store my water in glass jugs? Okay, some ideas coming in. Commonwealth Lake, rain barrels, Willow Creek, rain collection, water heater, hot water heater, nearby creeks using iodine tablets. What do you think of those water straws to purify water? Water purification from creeks and rivers.
These are good ideas. Okay. Well, let me.
Another one just came in from Hag Lake.
Hag Lake. Okay. Let's put these ideas into some categories here and talk about them. There are really only 3 sources of water for survival other than what you've already got stored. And then.
So I would say hot water heater has gotten several creeks, rivers, ponds, and rain collection, rain barrels, rain collection.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead, Barb.
Yep, I think most people are done responding.
Okay, all right. There are really 3 sources, and all of them are going to require treatment before they're safe to drink. Let me just take them one at a time. Rain. A variety of rain catchment devices can be installed to collect rainwater, especially runoff from your roof. Remember, however, that birds poop on your roof. And there may, in fact, be other things that are going to be a problem for it being drinkable. So you are going to have to treat it before you drink it. Lincoln Thomas, who was not able to come tonight, has actually installed a thorough system of rain barrels around his house. And if you contact us by email, he can maybe set up a connection and talk to you about that. The second source is standing water in our community, ponds and lakes. And we do have Commonwealth lakes and a lot of ponds in our area. Now, remember, again, that birds and other animals use these sources of standing water, and that and runoff from the streets make the water needed to be treated before you can use it safely. And then the third category is actually the best one, is moving water. and that's streams and rivers in the area. We have a number of streams and creeks in the Beaverton area, which vary in volume as the weather changes. Johnson Creek and Beaverton Creek in the Cedar Hills area are running pretty full right now, and will for quite a while with all the melting snow. But all of these have street runoff and who knows what else in them. And so treatment is absolutely going to be needed. Just a note for somebody that mentioned Hagg Lake. It is expected, at least by our planning agencies, that Hagg Lake, in the event of an 8 to 9 point earthquake off the coast, Hagg Lake is probably going to flood. It's going to break through its berm and flood. And you should not use flood water for drinking, even after treating it. Flood water goes through homes. It picks up toxic substances that cannot be well filtered and treated out of the water. And by the way, the same is also true of water that's had fuel in it, like gasoline or motor oil or pesticides or heavy metals. In some cases, some people even say that swimming pool chemicals make it untreatable. So there's some controversy about that one. So in all of these, we're going to have to treat the water in order to make it safe. Now, I want to give two notes regarding water that needs to be treated before I talk about the treatment methods. Regardless of what method that you use for treating water, you should always pre-filter non-potable water that is cloudy or has visible particles in it before treating it with any of these methods. You can run it through a clean rag or a coffee filter into a bucket or another container before treating the clearer water. This picture shows paper towels in a funnel running it into a bottle. The second note that I would give is that there are water testing kits that you can purchase that can give you a reading on the drinkability of your water. There's a variety. They're developed for testing, some of them for testing microbes. Some tests are for testing for heavy metals or other chemicals. You can look up the variety of kits easily on the internet. Okay, there are 3 basic ways to treat non-potable water to make it safe to drink or to cook with: boiling, treating with chemicals, and treating with running them through a very fine filter. Well, let's look at these one at a time. Again, remembering that you need to pre-filter any water that's visibly dirty as a first step. You can then boil it. Boiling is actually the easiest method of treating water. Heating it at a rolling boil for a full minute will kill most dangerous microbes. Again, don't boil water if it has fuels or chemicals in it. It could produce dangerous fumes, and the water still wouldn't be safe even after boiling. Now, of course, the drawback to boiling is that you're limited to the size of pot that you can boil it in. Although after it cools, you can store boiled water in a sanitized container for up to a week. But again, you have to wait for it to cool. But more importantly, in my mind, boiling water uses up fuel that you may, in a protracted recovery, you may need for cooking or for heating your house. The second method is chemical treatment. Now, you can buy tablets to put into non-potable water at any camping supply store. But the most reliable chemical treatment for water is actually simple, unscented household bleach. You can treat most water with 1/4 to a 1/2 teaspoon per gallon. Mix it, wait 30 minutes, and then you can use the water. It should have a slight bleachy smell. If it doesn't, then you need to treat it again before using it. Of course, the drawbacks of bleach are, number one, it smells bleachy. Number two, what many people don't know is that bleach actually loses its potency over time. And so if you're going to expect to use bleach for this purpose and keep it, you should replace it every 6 months or so. Also, one other thing, while bleach kills most harmful microorganisms, it is actually less effective against Giardia and Cryptosporidium, which are two very common resistant organisms in standing water and streams. Well, like boiling, chemical treatment requires that you maintain replaceable supplies, tablets or bleach, and of course, in the case of boiling, fuel. The third type of treating water is by filtering it through a microfilter. Now, by contrast with the other two methods, if you have a reliable filter, you really don't need to replenish your supplies frequently. Most of them last a year or so or more. Now, there are a number of one-person filters that can filter water effectively. This Life straw was mentioned in one of the inputs on chat. This is probably the most popular one of these. It's about $15 to buy. And the advertising at least says that in a dire emergency, you can usually stick this into a puddle and get a fairly quick drink. The other personal items here run from $35 to $75. And these are great additions to your go bag or for camping. The drawback, of course, is that they have very limited capacity and cannot supply a family's drinking water needs conveniently. You got to think of setting up house for a family of 4. It takes teamwork. There are a number of larger capacity filtering kits available. Now, some like this blue one on the upper left here cost a few $100s, and they will last for the duration of an extended outage. Capacity depends on the particular one that you buy. Katadyn and Berkey are old, long, trusted brands, and you can find these on the internet along with many others. We don't endorse any in particular, but you can look them up and find lots of them on the internet. The 2-bucket system here on the right is a much less expensive alternative, and it's actually highly recommended by most emergency planning agencies and by FEMA. These use ceramic filters, this little 4x4 filter here. They are long lasting, as much as a year, several hundred uses before it needs replacement. Now, the 2-bucket system is probably worth spending a little bit of time on because it's easy to assemble, and it can actually generate up to 35 to 50 gallons of drinkable water a day, plenty for a large family's needs for an extended period of time. All you need to do is just keep the top bucket filled with your raw water. So you would need to buy 2 5-gallon food quality buckets. These can be had for around $4 at Lowe's or most grocery stores. And don't forget that you will need the lids with them. You can also get them online. Next, you need to buy a kit like the one shown in the middle. Now, this is not the only kit that's available, but it's a good one. This has a 0.2 micron ceramic filter, and the filter kit comes with all the necessary hardware and parts that you need to assemble your system. These kits are available on Amazon for $30. We happen to use the one that is made by Just Water. It's a company in Texas that's been reliable for us. There's a video on YouTube for putting this kit together, and it's easy to follow. I put the location at the bottom of the slide there, but this will also be on a resource list that's available on our website. Now, with this system, you're actually going to have to assemble it. You're going to need to drill 3 holes, and so you're going to need a couple of drill bits and a drill. Clear instructions for how to do this come with the kit, along with all the parts, and along with your 2 standard food grade 5-gallon buckets. It's nice to buy actually an 18-inch length of standard surgical hose, and you can get that at Home Depot or Lowe's or at a pharmacy. You can get them actually at most hardware stores. The instructions for putting this together indicate that this can increase the flow rate to increase the flow rate from about 15 gallons a day to as much as 35 to 50 gallons per day. So you drill the holes, you assemble it, test it for leaks, and then you have a system. It's going to last as long as you are going to need it. Our recommendation is that you obtain the materials for building a 2-bucket water system. It can provide your water needs for as long as it takes for the utility systems to get the public supply back up and running, even if it takes months. In fact, we're so positive about this particular way of doing it. We at Cedar Hills Ready will be organizing a filter kit workshop at which we will sell these $30 kits. And if you bring in your 2 buckets, we'll help you drill the holes and assemble the kit for you. You'll walk out with a complete system. Now, we haven't scheduled the workshop yet because of the COVID pandemic, but we're hopeful that by late spring, summer, we can pull this off. If you're interested, give us your email and we will make sure that you are invited. And if you don't need the help, then we also have a 1-page handout with a list of these parts and instructions for the do-it-yourselfers on our website. Okay, that's the water section. Water is everything. Water is the basis of good health, good eating, living a reasonable life while recovering from a disaster. Please buy or make a kit to treat water. Do not run the risk of running out of good water. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic, but you're not done with buckets. I'm going to shift to number 3 here in the picture, and I'm going to take on the next water issue, which is sanitation, and 2 more buckets are going to show up. So as we start, remember the planning assumption of 3+ months of disrupted sewer systems. No toilets. Now, remember our visualization of an 8 to 9 point earthquake after the shaking is over and you've seen to the family's safety and attended to the utility shut-offs and you've checked in with everybody. Well, then, according to my wife, the most urgent thing is always, you gotta go to the bathroom. No toilets. And you gotta go. You gotta go. Okay, hold your water, one thing at a time. We're going to be dealing with waste management. Do it yourself. Collection, disposal, and sanitation. But first, an important side note. I hate to make you wait, but one of the recommendations of our emergency planners is that after shutting off the water, you immediately tape all of your toilet seats in the house shut tight. What? Okay, remember that you won't have water to use in flushing, so you won't want to be using your toilets until the public agencies turn the water back on and give us the go-ahead. That might be months. But even more important are the rats. Rats! Yes, what we have not mentioned yet is that there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of rats living in the sewer system. And when they stop getting a regular flow of water and whatever, well, they are known to travel right up the now empty pipes and join you in your home. So tape those lids shut. Okay, gotta go. Back to water. What you used to take for granted is now something that you're gonna have to attend to yourself. The collection and disposal of family waste and camping style hygiene for an indeterminate period of time. Remember that local gas stations after an earthquake and restaurants and gyms are not going to be available for you to go potty. You're going to have to take care of this yourself. So let's size the problem that you're up against. Health experts say that you should drink, as we said, take in at least a half a gallon of water every day to stay healthy and hydrated. And if you do this, they tell us that you are going to pee a quarter to a half gallon of urine a day each. And eating regularly, you will poop 10 ounces per person per day. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but let's look at just 1 week for a family of 4. 10 ounces of poo each is 2.5 pounds a day for 4 people. Half gallon each is 2 gallons a day. So just for 1 week of downtime of the toilets is 7 times that. 14 gallons of pee and 17 pounds of poo to be collected and safely disposed of every week. I know the now of I gotta go is urgent, or it will be when it's now, but you have a volume challenge, so we need to plan ahead. Collection, disposal, and sanitation. You are used to taking that for granted, and now you're going to have to take care of it yourself. So, what are the options? Well, digging multiple holes in your yard is not recommended. We could contaminate our community water table pretty quickly if a lot of people did that. You need a toilet system. So for this, you really have a couple of options. On the left here, you can purchase and learn how to use a chemical or composting toilet that looks like this one. They work very well, and they cost up to $1,000. If you want to investigate purchasing a pre-manufactured composting toilet, you can find them easily on the internet under composting toilets. And so I'm going to move over to my second 2-bucket system. This is recommended by FEMA and the state emergency agencies. This is an inexpensive solution, and it's worth focusing on for this discussion. Actually, this was a strategy that was adopted by New Zealand in their 2016 and later earthquakes, which devastated the infrastructure in cities like Christchurch, for example. Folks liked it. It worked well. It proved an effective strategy for a very long time while they repaired their sewer systems, which actually took years. All right. I guess what I wanted to say was, why 2 buckets? Okay. To separate the pee and the poo. Why separate the pee and the poo? Most of the volume in your waste is urine, and urine is not toxic, at least right away. Most of the odor from porta potties and public toilets and outhouses comes from urine mixed with poo. Keeping them separate provides a much less unpleasant environment. You can actually dilute pee 1-to-1 with water and pour it into the ground, pour it in your garden or on your compost or somewhere away from your living area. It won't breed bacteria and it won't smell a lot. And that takes care of most of your volume challenge. There are differing instructions on diluting the pee. Some people say it takes 4 gallons of water to 1 of the pee, but in any case, it shouldn't be less than 1-to-1. All right, poo. Poo is a lot less volume. On the other hand, poo contains microorganisms, dangerous ones that can cause dysentery and cholera and a whole host of really bad diseases. Remember the big quake in Haiti a few years ago? Rampant cholera. It's a very common problem when you don't have adequate sanitary facilities. So for that reason, you need to keep the poo separate and dispose of it carefully. So what is this 2-bucket system? How do you assemble it? And how do you use it? It's actually pretty easy. No drilling required. What do you need? You need 2 plastic buckets, standard 5-gallon buckets that are available at Lowe's or Fred Meyer's. These buckets do not need to be food grade, but they do need to be sturdy enough to support your weight. You can get free used 5-gallon buckets, paint buckets from Metro, just call them. And most big box hardware stores actually have them. They're branded and they usually cost about $3. Sometimes you can get them free. Secondly, you need a toilet seat or 2. Now you can adapt a regular toilet seat or buy a seat that's designed for use with buckets. The Reliance Luggable Loo is what we have bought. Actually, we have 2 of them. It is sold at Sportsman's Warehouse, Dick's Sporting Goods, REI, Cabela's, any major local sporting goods retailers. It's about $15 to $17, and they snap right onto the bucket easily and snap off easily. All right. Thirdly, you're going to need a roll of sturdy, heavy-duty plastic garbage bags, sized 13 to 20 gallons. Trash compactor bags are actually recommended because they're stronger. I think they're a full 3 mils in thickness. You're going to need to line your poo bucket with a bag so that you can empty your poo bucket simply and cleanly without messing up the bucket itself. Don't let the liner get more than half full before changing it. I'll talk about the disposal of used bags in just a minute. You're going to need a supply of carbon-based material. This can be sawdust, shredded newspaper, bark chips, dry leaves, peat moss, wood stove pellets, anything that's compostable carbon. You can ask an office for a free bag of shredded paper or get a free bag of sawdust from a lumber yard. I use a wood lathe myself and I generate a lot of wood shavings. I just put it into a big garbage bag and keep it for this purpose. The purpose of the carbon material is to create a cover layer in your poo bucket every time you use it. Now, obviously, this will fill up your bag liner faster, but there are really important reasons to do this. Number one, obviously, covering up your poo is going to reduce odors. Number two, carbon is the source of material that will start the composting process for human waste. This will transform it into a safe material faster and reduce the hazard of the material over time. Now, don't make the mistake of creating a compost heap for poo next to your kitchen scrap compost. No, poo processing is much more complicated and can take years. You don't want to take that responsibility on in the midst of a disaster. And then finally, in the bucket, keeping the poo covered with a layer of sawdust or leaves will keep flying insects away, which reduces the possibility of spreading infections. We have put together a handout which has a list of elements needed, pictures, and average prices for everything in your 2-bucket toilet station. And we're happy to direct you to it on our website. We also will be sending it out as a handout with our newsletter. There are also websites with details setting up a 2-bucket pee and poo stations. So where do you put your toilet station? Well, modesty might be a factor. And to keep out of the rain, there are shelters like this one that you can buy at REI or other camping stores, or you can construct your own shed. Location depends on what your particular circumstances are, on your deck or in a selected place in the yard that's flat and easy to get to in the dark. It's important to have enough room so that the pee and poo buckets are next to each other so that you can always make sure that the poo bucket gets the toilet paper and not the pee bucket. If you have a big enough bathroom and your house is still habitable, then why not put them in there? Perfectly good plan, probably ours. And you also obviously need a wash station nearby with a place to hold soap, water, and towels. Now, there are lots and lots of do-it-yourself designs for these online and ideas for pouring water because you're not going to want to be using your sink. I'm going to talk about this in more detail on the next section on hygiene. Finally, what we haven't talked about is real final disposal. Obviously, you may need to store your poo bags for quite a while. Pickup service is unlikely to be available for some period until the utility services are restored. And it's important that you do not bury these bags. Animals can and will dig them up and rupture the bags and create a very dangerous mess. Now, if you have an extra garbage bin, that can be a safe temporary storage for your family. Do not use recycle or garbage cans that you use for regular pickup. You will not want to use them after things have gone back to normal after you've been storing poo in it. Your poo bin is going to have to be separate and stay safe until the public services resume. Your neighborhood actually might organize a common storage site that can be temporary disposal station for the neighborhood. It needs to have sufficient capacity, of course, and it needs to be a secure container that is safe from children, pets, rats, and flies. A final note on the assembly and use of your sanitation station. Always be careful when bagging your contents. For example, wear disposable gloves, and afterwards, always wash your hands with soap and water or alcohol-based sanitizer. Aha, nice segue. Enough of toilet talk. Let's switch to talking about hygiene. More need for clean water. Now, I mentioned a wash station earlier. Hand hygiene is really critical to preserving good health. When you no longer have easy access to clean water, what do you need? You need a place for soaps and a way to dispense water. Hand sanitizer, obviously, is important to have for emergency use when you don't have water. Foaming hand soap is very handy when your hands are visibly dirty because it doesn't require water to lather up, and that helps you save your precious stored water supplies. But actually, soap and water is still the best solution to cleanliness. Now, while I don't recommend using hypoallergenic soap in general because of its effect on resistant bacteria, it's a very good thing to have for this situation. Well, there are commercially available hands-free wash stations on the internet, like this one here. This one is Tyworks, about a $70 kit, and is available. They're not the only ones. There are a number of these available on the internet. There are also instructions on how to make your own, like the one here. It requires a siphon. You got to buy a siphon, more buckets, and some hardware. But again, there are lots of instructions on how to do it on the internet. I don't have time to do it here. The important point is to have a way to wash your hands without touching the spigot where the water comes out. We recommend constructing what's called a tippy tap. It's not difficult to put together, and it requires few moving parts and will allow you to wash your hands without touching a spigot. Tippy tap is operated by a foot lever, this footboard here, and thus reduces the chance for bacteria transmission as the hands only touch the soap. It uses only 2 ounces of water to wash your hands versus 2 ounces of water versus about 17 that it takes if you wash your hands in a bowl of water. There are high resolution instructions on how to build one of these at www.tippytap.org. Where you situate your wash station is going to vary with your circumstances. You will not be using your kitchen sink, at least until the go-ahead is announced by the authorities. So you need to set things up in a convenient place and manage it like a home. It's pretty much like camping, actually. Detailed instructions that are easy to follow are available on the CDC website, and we've included that address on our resource sheets that's on the website. Okay, I'm running out of time. Water, water, water. We are all going to need to find ways to manage our use of water to stay healthy and alive after a big earthquake. I hope we've provided you with a sense of how important it is to be prepared to take over from Tualatin Hills Water and Sewer, at least for a while, because someday each of us may have to do that for our families. And I hope that we have provided some useful information and resources to put together the supplies that you need. There's lots and lots of information online. And in addition to that, we have assembled a list of great website links as well as downloadable handouts covering a number of the specific areas that we've covered today. All of this is available on our Quake Up site. A lot more to say, but no more time. You can get to the website here. It's tinyurl, that's tinyurl.com/CRHWash 21721. That's the date. tinyurl.com/CRHWash 21721. And on that site, we will also have available for you our Neighborhood Ready booklet that you can download, which includes all kinds of information on how to get prepared for disasters. Okay, thank you so much for listening. I'm out of time, and I am going to turn this meeting back over to Karen. Karen, are you?
Hold on one sec. Okay, I'm unmuted.
There you are. Sorry.
Thank you, Bill. There are a lot of things to be prepared for in a disaster. And today we've highlighted 3 of the most important things to think about: water, sanitation, and hygiene. And hope that you're spread this information to your neighbors, because you definitely want them to do that, get prepared. You don't want them stuck without water, and you definitely want them to have potty stations. So preparing for a disaster sometimes may feel like a little overwhelming. It's a learning process. Bill and I are not totally ready. And we just advocate taking it one piece at a time. And we have lots of resources available just for this program, as Bill said, at the CHR WASH 21721, tiny URL. And so before we go to the Q&A session, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what's up next for March 17th. Our next month's topic is going to be about go bags, what goes into your go bag. And as you guys have probably noticed, that there is an increase in disasters that are requiring fast evacuation or sheltering in place. For example, the 2020 fires in Oregon required many of our neighbors and friends to evacuate with no time to spare. Some barely escaped with their lives. And, we just are having an ice storm. Some of us have had to have visitors come over for that. So maybe you've learned something in the ice storm on what kinds of things you might want to have around in terms of supplies. So join us on Wednesday, March 17th at 7 p.m. And we'll talk about under the bed kits, car, work, and school packs. That's like a 1 to 2 day pack, and go bags and home emergency supplies, kind of what you want as the minimum. And what we're going to do for that is going to be different from the format of this meeting. We're going to try and do more interactivity, because every time we've had this particular go bag type meeting, we've learned something new from people who come. And so we're going to do like breakout sessions and have a scenario based, disaster imagineering. Anyway, we're going to create some like tabletop exercises, and everybody's going to share their information. So we'll cover the basics of what you should have in your various kits, and then we'll add upon that based on your input. And so that is what we're going to be doing next month. And I've got a link at the bottom of the screen there. If you go there, you can sign up already. We've already got a sign up going there for pre-registering. So now I'd like to turn this over to Barbara for our Q&A portion of the presentation. And our speakers are going to stay after for a bit to answer your questions. And if you'd like to leave, that's also fine. Barbara?
Thanks, Karen. Some of these questions came in with the registration, so I'll just go through those real quickly. Jane asked if there was any help on requiring life-saving medication. I think in some of our upcoming meetings, I don't remember which month, we talked more about your personal medication, but Jane, we'll get back to you on that if we may. Several questions then about stored water, how long it lasts, how often you need to change it. I think Bill got into that during his presentation, but one person suggested or commented that several of her purchased water jugs have leaked. And the question is, do the 5-gallon containers, are they typically more leak proof?
Is my understanding that they are more robust and less likely to leak.
Okay, thank you.
Now they're heavier than 1 gallon, and so that may be a factor. But yeah, I think they should be strong enough.
Okay. Bill, there were several questions about the filters and purification. Is there an expiration date on the purification tablets? Karen asked.
Actually, I do not know the answer to that. I suspect that there is. I don't use those even on my camping trips, so I don't know. But you could stop at any camping supply store and look at the labels, or you could look online.
Okay, and then the other question was, Angela asked that she had not been aware that the life straws and filters have a time limit, and you had mentioned 1 year. She was asking where you got that information.
Actually, that is a very, very general estimate. And that doesn't necessarily, that shouldn't be viewed as a limit. It really depends on how much use it gets. Those filters do clog up after multiple uses. And when I asked about it, they said, well, if you're using it sort of normally, that's going to last at least a year. But if in a disaster situation, you're trying to drink water from it every day, you might want to have an extra one because those filters do clog up after a while.
Okay, thank you. And Chris or Jennifer, I wasn't quite sure on the name on this, made a comment that the Titan Ready water system has a great water system for storage. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but she put that in the chat. Huh. And Karen added that I think this is on your 2 bucket water filter system, is that you folks have filters available at your cost.
Yes.
If you need the filter. Okay.
Yes.
Then Gerald asked, now this is on to pee and poo. Gerald asked, what do apartment dwellers do for pee and poo?
It's the same concept. You need to find a way. First of all, every apartment house should have a disaster plan, and you should talk to the manager about what their plan is. And it's not going to be a surprise if they don't have one, but you should ask them about it, and then ask them what is the plan to store bags of poo during an emergency. Does the apartment complex have a container just for those? And if not, encourage them to address the owner and get that in place.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Another question then, Cindy asked, is a plastic trash bin for storage okay? Or do you really feel that a metal bin is critical?
Well, I have read both, and you know, I think you have to make your own judgment. What you want to make sure of is that, well, a bin that looks like the garbage bins that and recycling bins that you normally use ought to be fine, but you need to make sure that they are completely shut and there's something heavy on the lid so that animals and rats don't get in it. That's obviously less likely to be a problem if you have a metal garbage can. But again, that lid needs to fit on tightly so that that's completely secure.
Okay. And then a note from Cindy. She said that the tiny URL that you put in was not working for her. So I think Karen maybe has corrected that. I'll get back into chat. I'm going to keep going and we'll get back to that. Thank you for checking that out. Cheryl said, yes, tablets do actually have an expiration date. So sounds like be aware of that when you're purchasing those. And then a question from Carol. Why is water stored in apple juice worse or more dangerous than Commonwealth Lake?
We're not talking about storing Commonwealth Lake water. We're talking about filtered water that's been made drinkable before you store it.
Okay, or tap water.
If you're tap water, and
okay.
Yeah, and the reason that you don't want to use an apple juice container is that plastic is known to be semi-permeable. And even if you put clean water in there, there's probably or possibly bacteria that have come from the apple juice. And if that's stored for very long, that could develop into a problem.
Okay. And then Marty asked, where do you store all your supplies? Garage, outside shed, basement?
Well, we're going to talk about that in March.
Yes, we are.
In detail.
And Marty, the short answer is a little bit everywhere.
The way that I look at it, when I looked at all of the storage, I've got 2 weeks worth of water stored. But for everything beyond that, I have a two bucket filter system that doesn't take up much room, and so I keep it in the garden shed.
Okay, and then Karen did put a full URL at the bottom of the chat. So if everybody would check their chat, it's the last one entered. It's at Quake Up W Weebly. Marty comes back to says, clear the clutter, fill with preparation.
I like it.
Well, we would know what that is, right, Karen?
No.
I was going to say, we're all going to be home a few more months, so now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Bill, can you
one more thing? I noticed that someone earlier in the earlier section mentioned, what about using glass for storing water?
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything at the time, but I should say something about that. Remember, we're talking about a severe earthquake, and glass is breakable. So that's why I don't store my water in a glass jug.
You know, Bill, one of the things that I don't think you got into too much detail were the big 50-gallon drums. I think those are available through Walmart, but I don't think they come with the pumps that are necessary.
Yeah. And you got to have a place to put a 50-gallon drum, and replacing that water every 6 months is a bit of a chore,
right?
Compared to cycling water through a 5-gallon or a 7-gallon jug.
Right. I saw it on one of your slides, and people ask about it sometimes.
So Barbara, do we have any additional questions? And I'm opening it up if anybody wants to unmute and make a comment.
Last question from Tess. Do you archive these sessions on your webpage?
We are videoing them, and I have a YouTube page, and we will be sending out the link in our probably our newsletter email. So unless I can get it up there really quickly tomorrow, we're trying to get an email out to y'all tomorrow, but either tomorrow or Friday. And yeah, it'll be available.
Okay, that's all I see in chat right now.
Any other questions?
It looks like we've still got about 45 people with us. So
yeah, if you guys have I just want to say thank you for taking care of yourself and yours, and you can unmute if you like and say goodbye, and we are done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.